Let us now invite Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Alsheraa to please come forward for tonight's majlis. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أفضل الذكر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا أبي عبد الله الحسين عليه السلام وجعلنا الله وإياكم من الطالبين بثأره بين يدي الإمام المنصور المؤيد المهدي من آل محمد صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهرة صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن جميعا وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب الحسين خصوصا سيدي ومولاي كفيل الهواشم قمر بني هاشم أبا الفضل العباس السلام عليكم جميعا يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد يقول الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أهل الكتاب لما تلبسون الحق بالباطل وتكتمون الحق وأنتم تعلمون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Illuminate your hearts with a very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There is no shadow of doubt that the legacy and saga of Karbala is one of the most, if not the most, impressive moments within Islamic history. Dare I say world history. Because when you observe what transpired on that day in the field of Karbala, you find humanitarian values that are transcendental and universal. You don't need to be Muslim, Shi'i, Ithni Ashri necessarily to agree with the stance of staying on the side of justice against injustice, resisting oppression against the oppressor. You don't need to be someone that adheres to an ideology that is unique and linked with the prophetic household to understand that these are values that are humanitarian and global. Among what happened in Karbala, we find moments that are just jaw-dropping. We just look at what went on and we think to ourselves, that is incredible. That was amazing. That was, with a lack of better words, or for a lack of better words, awesome. There's no way I can explain that any better. This has led many who both come from the field of antagonizing the school of Ahlul-bayt and from the field of the school of Ahlul-bayt to come forth with certain exaggerations. There are many cultural myths related to Karbala, brothers and sisters. Cultural myths, meaning contingent to my upbringing, I've decided to affect the minds of those who listen about the stories of Karbala, about what happened, based on what I feel makes the story even better. When something is perfect, you don't need to add anything to it to make it seem nicer. Many of the women will tell you, or even those from the men, who are experts in preparing very good, wonderful dishes, let's say. If you come and add something more to it, you're removing from its greatness, from its value, etc. Or, if you've made the most optimal vehicle, any more addition, it'll just be too much. It'll be unnecessary. It'll be redundant. Why did you have that? Why did you add that upgrade? The speed, the whatever is all already there. The aesthetics of it. In fact, your addition to it removed from its value. Sometimes there is value in simplicity, or there is value in perfection that doesn't necessarily meet your standard. And I said earlier, there are those from the antagonizing camp that will come and make exaggerations just to remove from the significance of Karbala because they can't handle it. And then there are those from the camp of Ahlul-bayt who will make exaggerations just to think that they have included or increased in the significance of Karbala, but without realizing both of them have ruined it. Why? Because the intentions are different, the conclusion is the exact same. There are people from the non-Shia worldview that will tell you Imam Hussein had no clue he was going to die in Karbala. He literally wanted power, political power. Hubbud dunya. And that's the connotation they will associate with Abu Abdullah. Relative to Imam al-Hussein, Imam al-Hassan, his brother. Imam Hassan would make peace treaties, was a more civil, wise individual, and he wanted the akhirah. Whereas Abu Abdullah wanted the dunya, and look at what happened. Look at their akhirah, look at their khatimah. So what they like to say is this. There is a hadith regarding the Mahdi from the non-Shia school view, that this Mahdi is not from the line of Sayyid al-Shuhada, from the Imams of Ahlul-bayt, the Tis'at al-Ma'sumin, that come from Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. He's from al-Hassan. Why? Many of their scholars have maintained it's because of the contribution that al-Hassan gave. Instead of fighting, because Islam is not very violent, it's not a religion that stands up against oppressors, you can be violent against injustice. As a result, he was more wise and peaceful. Allah blessed the line of al-Hassan with al-Imam al-Mahdi. Whereas the Shia, and in our interpretation, the Mahdi is from al-Hussein. But Allah, in their interpretation, didn't give the Mahdi in the line of Imam al-Hussein because Imam Hussein wanted the dunya. So they'll make these exaggerations. It was after political gain. I mean, at the end of the day, when over 5,000 from the city of Kufa dispatched letters to you in Medina, come and rule over us, and if you are on your way and you get intercepted by the forces of Yazid ibn Muawiyah and die in the process, it looks really clear that you wanted power and you died. Therefore, Imam Hussein was more political. As a result, Allah didn't give him the Mahdi in his lineage. So this is one false accusation and misconception leveled against Imam al-Hussein from the non-Shia worldview. Come and look at the khurafat and mazbala and the outraging content from the Shia worldview. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he killed 300,000 people in 1 minute. This is an actual statement that many people will utter on the manabir. They'll exaggerate moments just to think they have served the message of Karbala. When you are to ask them, where did you find this? Can you cite it for me? They'll say, just trust the heart. Trust the heart. You know, the heart, your heart is good. But what you did is you destroyed many other hearts in the process. We know your intentions are sincere. But the ghaya does not justify the wasila. The ghaya, meaning the intention, does not justify what you use to reach that intention. Well, I want to get people loving Imam Hussein. It's as if saying that what Imam Hussein did was not enough, so you need to exaggerate. Many people will exaggerate things just for the sake of poetry. Poetry. I need it to sound nice, so I'll alter or critique a certain character about one of the companions of Imam Hussein. Or even the Imam and his family. There was a moment, I recall, reciting the musibah of Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar, if anyone knows anything about his name, just his name, he's the Akbar from the children of Imam al-Hussein. That's why he's called the older one, because he had many other children. Al-Azghar, Zainul Abidin, and many daughters, 4 of them approximately. He is the oldest. Then he's the oldest, according to many traditions, he is over 25 years old at the very minimum, and he is not older than 30, because some discrepancies in the history will tell you that there are some alternative opinions. But he is no younger than 25 years old, but many will debate whether it's a little bit above that or it's exactly that. Okay, fine. Someone said, you ruined my noha. Like, why? Because you mentioned Aliul Akbar was the oldest. When my qasida, I'm going to say he's 18. And 18 rhymes better with what I'm going to say afterwards. So for the sake of rhyming, you're going to ruin a history and heritage. Because what happens all of a sudden? Imam Zayn Abidin becomes 13 years old. If Aliul Akbar is 18. Al-Azghar is probably not even born. Because the dates are all flip-flopped all over the place because of your exaggeration. But it sounds better. Who cares what it sounds like? At the end of the day, everything he gave from blood, sweat, and tears on that day is significant. It's perfect. You can't add anything to perfection. That makes it imperfect. That's literally the definition. Something whereby if you alter, it decreases in its value. Leave it, don't touch it. But come and try your best to bring perspectives maybe, bring alternative thought, bring a new look. Don't alter what's there. That's the mabda, the foundation. Build on it. Don't change the foundation. Because many people's iman will become wavery. On one side, you have the enemies of Ahlul-bayt, exaggerating nonsensical things. They will say that Abul Fadl al-Abbas, for example, he didn't lose his arms. You guys are making things up. And then they'll cite the hadith, he lost one arm. This is there. It's all present. So they'll try to demote from the significance. Whereas on our side, there are some who claim to love Ahlul-bayt, do injustice to them, and will say Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam had wings on Karbala. Habibi, don't alter the hadith. Allah gifted him wings in Jannah, like He gifted Ja'far al-Tayyar in Jannah. Compensation for the two arms, salamullahi alayh, that he lost. Don't bring wings in the battle and make this number an exaggeration. Many cultural misconceptions have emerged. And by the way, these cultural misconceptions are haram to the highest degree. Because our ulama, it's like, okay, if you're going to lie, make your lie work a little bit. At least reference a hadith, weak for goodness sake. Don't say that it's from the heart. And the best part is, I saw it in a dream. MashaAllah, wahi still comes down to the earth in you, mashallah. My local sister or brother or uncle, you still receive that wahi, that revelation from the heavens. And of all things you received that information we all never heard about. As if everything he gave on that day wasn't enough and you have to add more to it. Adding more will decrease. Many of our ulama maintain that if you so much even exaggerate in poetry, you have done Ahlul-bayt a disservice. What do we mean? Sheikh Abbas al-Qumi, how many of us know and honor this man who compiled Mafatihul Jinan? There is no household in the Shia world except that it has these two books, Quran al-Kareem, Mafatih al-Jinan of Sheikh Abbas al-Qumi. Any ziyarah, any dua you want, verified and authenticated by this man who worked his socks off to compile the most accurate traditions by the Ahlul-bayt. People read Dua Kumail because of his contribution. Or it was a lost dua somewhere in Wasa'il al-Shia of 110 volumes of Al-Hurr al-Amili. You have to look for it and find it. He just compiled it in one little book. We all benefit. He has a book called Muntaha al-Amal, as important as Mafatih al-Jinan. This one is in regards to ahadith. Mafatih al-Jinan is in regards to dua and supplication. Al-Shaykh Abbas al-Qumi is called Fakhr al-Muhaqqiqeen, the most honored one of the researchers, by the maraja of his time and those who came afterwards, among them Agha Buzuq al-Tahrani, among them Sayyid Hussein al-Barajurdi, among them Ayatollah Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khoi. When they refer to him, they call him Fakhr al-Muhaqqiqeen, the most honored of the researchers because of what he has contributed. In his book, Muntaha al-Amal, he mentions some speakers, and this is beautiful, because Shaykh Abbas al-Qumi died in the 30s, 1930s. This is beautiful. He says some speakers, so we talk about 100 years ago, there were speakers back then, when they go up, they begin to recite poetry on Ahlul-bayt. They begin exaggerating. When you ask them, that's not true. They say, look, it's called lisan hal. Get it straight. Lisanul hal means it's as if they would have said. There is nothing wrong with being poetic or giving a poetic critique, for example, so long as you don't misguide people into thinking that's exactly what they said. There's a beautiful poem, for example, where Imam al-Hussein, as if he is speaking to Imam al-Hassan, I have a dome constructed over my grave and you have a rock. That's fair, because people understand Imam Hussein died, then the dome was created. That's fair, that's fine. And you have to indicate clearly that, look, it's as if, and the poet poetically says the following. But some people, when they make these perspectives clear to the masses, they don't indicate whether or not this is lisanu hal. Sheikh Abbas al-Qumi says that's haram. That's haram. Because you did something that never really happened. You mentioned it. And now people actually believe in it. And they go home raising their children that Ali al-Akbar was 18 years old apparently. Or that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam began to cry on the day of Karbala, asking, Ya Allah, they're burning because of me. You know that never happened. That never happened. Not a single hadith where he stopped. Why are you crying, Ya Hussein, in Karbala like this? He says, they're going to burn in hell because of me. One, in the outset, begins to assume, well, that does make some sort of sense. Clearly, they're going to burn if they fight their Imam. But Imam al-Hussein is crying for individuals that are laughing at him and will go on to slaughter his own children and family. And he's like, I feel bad for your sake, therefore I'm crying. That's not the case. First of all, there is no origin or citation to that, number one. Number two, the content of it is problematic. Abu Abdullah was firm, samood, conviction, was not wavery, did not have a shadow of doubt, did not feel bad, for example. He preached to them. He's like, look, I'm going to guide you. If you don't listen, then I'll fight you. Amir al-Mu'minin would fight with conviction, never be seen crying. No, I'm mad at you for disobeying Allah. Haven't we heard of the incident in the battle of Khandaq, where Amr ibn Wad al-Amri comes to Amir al-Mu'minin and they get into that altercation. Before the Imam strikes him, he pauses, then he kills him. And then they ask him, Ya Abul Hassan, you waited before you killed him. He's like, he spat at my face. He insulted me. I was mad and I wanted to strike him out of my anger. But the son of Abu Talib does not kill because he is angered. He kills because they have angered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that conflict, there isn't this remorse, sorrow, whimper. That was not cited. Look, if there's a tradition, albeit present it. Hatu burhanakum. Don't make things up because, oh, that breaks the heart. Imam Hussein feels sorry for Yazid. He feels sorry for Shimr. These exaggerations, we're dealing enough with them from the other side, lowering the significance of Karbala. What are some misconceptions that have been leveled against the story and saga of what transpired in Karbala, brothers and sisters? You will notice the following are contingent culturally. Each culture, what they like to emphasize, and by the way, I understand this is a sensitive topic because now you're talking culture, so there's an identity here. Oh, don't speak about my identity. We grew up on this. Grow up with what you were taught and passed on through generations. It's all yours. But we'll stick with the narrations of Rasulullah and Imam al-Sadiq. They spoke about Karbala clearly. One before it happened and one after it happened, and we'll take from there. We don't need exaggerations. One time I recall, in the 1920s, when the British invaded Iraq, they went to Basra. Anyone knows me, I'm from Basra. So they went there, they probably went to my great-grandparents, I don't know. And they started converting people, inshallah not my great-grandparents, but they started converting people to Christianity and giving them a stipend, a paycheck. And these Christians, Iraqis that have just, Iraqis in Basra, you turn them to Christianity, these people, they bleed ya al-Banin. You turn them to Christians, they were told, listen, you would attend church on Sunday, your Salat Jum'ah, convert it to a Sunday, and the preacher will preach to you. So this man, according to many historic analyses, would preach to them in the Arabic, and he got to the story, many say, of the crucifixion of Christ. And so he got to the point, and these Iraqis are sitting down. You know who Iraqis are? They're sitting down and they're just listening, and the lady's still wearing her abaya, and the man still has his agal on. He's just, okay, Jesus was crucified. And then he says it in such a beautiful climax manner, and then he was risen on the cross. All of them did salawat that moment. Allahumma salli ala. The priest said, stop. You guys are no longer Muslims. Right now, you just listen. You're Christian. Salawat, put that away. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That doesn't exist in this religion. Like, oh, sorry, we're just used to it. So then he continued, after he was crucified, they buried him. Then they said another, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He's like, stop. I just told you. No more salawat. We're Christians now. He's like, sorry, we grew up doing this when we hear exciting moments, like the equivalent Nara Haydari, let's say, for example. Then the man said, and after he was crucified and buried, he was risen from the dead. Then they said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That happened. The man said, khalas, get out of here. You guys are still Muslims. They said, no. we swear, Billah, by Allah, we swear we will stay Christians. No, Bil Abbas, we will stay Christians. They swore on Abu al-Fadl Abbas then and there to emphasize that, look, we're still on this, give us that money, don't cut it off from us. This is one indication of the connection that that culture or community has with Abu al-Fadl Abbas. And of course, Abu al-Fadl, loser is the one who doesn't have a connection with him. Lost and condemned is the one. As a result of that mahabbah, we do notice, however, false claims towards Abu al-Fadl, salamullahi alayh. There was one claim that Abu al-Fadl Abbas, he himself single-handedly got rid of 30,000 people. Now the problem with such claims and accusations is that when we read the attendees of Karbala from the opposition, they were exactly 30,000. Well, the battle was over in that situation. These claims, brothers and sisters, they need to be rechecked. Other communities and cultures will emphasize Dhul Janah, for example, the horse of Abu Abdullah. That Pegasus suddenly with wings and it was fighting. Dhul Janah doesn't need anyone to exaggerate for him. The horse of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam is a blessing in this earth. And the animals that are circulating the Ahlul-bayt all know the right of Ahlul-bayt. It's the insan that doesn't know the right and needs to exaggerate. May Allah show His mercy on even the horse that wept for Abu Abdullah. But we don't come and exaggerate because there is a cultural contingency on our end. Some of these allegations that have been laid is that Imam Hussein had no clue he was going to go to Karbala and the main goal was Kufa. Barring the ahadith that speak about Rasulullah pre the death of Abu Abdullah, forgetting those, or the turab that Salama received by Jibreel, Rasulullah gifted it to her, he would say, this is from Karbala, if it turns into blood, then you know that my Hussein, my beloved son, has been slaughtered, and this can be found in Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain of Al-Hakim al-Naysapuri, the editions of the Sahihain, Muslim and Bukhari, accurate hadith, but never revealed in those two works and materials for some reason. Therefore, these are the additions. Forgetting that, or forgetting Lady Zahra crying over what will happen to Abu Abdullah. We all know his destiny was Karbala. Forget those. Forget even the sermons of Imam al-Hussein before he leaves to Karbala. He's in Mecca and he begins to say, it's as if my limbs are going to be slashed and my children taken captive and women. Like death, we wear it like the children of Adam wears a nice necklace. We wear it around our necks. Forgetting all of these, look at the following two observations. Number one, Imam Hussein 100% knew he was going to Karbala, knew he was going. How do we substantiate that? The fact that he took certain people and left certain people behind. He has a huge family. Salamullahi alayhi has a large family. He has, from his siblings, a large amount. You want to count them, he has Aun bin Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ja'far ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abdullah ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ubaydullah ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. He has definitely Hilal ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu Bakr ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, Muhammad al-Hanafiya ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. He has these siblings, Uthman ibn Ali, of course Abu al-Fadl himself, and he has many other sisters. He only takes Zainab, he only takes Abbas. Sayyidah Zainab's husband, Abdullah bin Ja'far, stays behind. Many ulama maintain there are some excuses here and there. For example, one may have been blind, the other was sick. Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, how much did he fight in Jamal and Siffin valiantly, not in attendance in Karbala? Some will say, well, Imam Hussein said, stay behind. If all the men die, then who's there from Banu Hashim? Those are valid reasons. But we still notice from the family of Abu Abdullah, he kept some behind. Why take Sayyidah Zainab and leave al-Banin, for example? If you're going to receive bay'ah from 5,000 Kufans, they're going to make you an emir upon them, live beautifully, luxuriously, keep the rest of your family in Medina? Well, that doesn't make sense politically at all. It's as if he knows and does know that the journey and destination is not Kufa. Where is it? Karbala. And I know it's my last destination, but it's not theirs. So they need someone to take the reins after me. Zainab can do it. And they will head from Kufa to Sham. Only she can maintain. Only she can handle. Some of you stay, I will take the rest. His decision as to who he brought is an indication that he knew where he was headed. Then you look at the conclusions that happened. What did Imam Hussein say? I did not come out أشرا ولا باطلا ولا ظالما وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جد رسول الله أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. I did not come out as an oppressor to take and usurp rights. Rather, I have come out to enjoin good and forbid evil. What happened after Karbala? He enjoined good and forbid evil. Yazid was no more. That's the biggest nahi an al-munkar. And he revived the message of Rasulullah. That's why Rasulullah says, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. I'm from him because I died before Karbala and people forgot me. He revived me. That's how I'm from him. Amr bil ma'ruf, anha an al-munkar. What he set off to do, he actually accomplished in Karbala and not anything to do with Kufa. This is one allegation that is leveled against Abu Abdullah. Another one is the amount of people that came to fight him. I have seen from our speakers exaggerations. They don't cite when you ask them. 1,800,000 forces fought Imam al-Hussein. Well, the number of Muslims probably wasn't even that much at that time. 1,800,000 forces. Now, we don't jump and rush and say, you guys are making lies up. La. We have to always be people that have husn al-dhan in these circumstances, especially if we hear our ulama say them. Let's not jump to conclusions, oh, you're a liar, or you're exaggerating. No. Perhaps, when we read the ziyarah, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِعَتْ بِذَلِكَ فَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ. And may Allah condemn the group of humans who heard of what happened and were satisfied with it. Of course, if all the Muslims were present and didn't contribute to what Imam Hussein's mission was, then they're all condemned. So let's imagine how many Muslims were there. Maybe that's one perspective when someone says 1,800,000 Muslims went against him. Because if you weren't with, you're either with Hussein or you're against him. You don't take a medium ground. You don't plead the fifth with Abu Abdullah. You're with Abu Abdullah or your swords are on Abu Abdullah. There's no I plead the fifth, like Hamid bin Muslim, who was present in Karbala, and they asked him, are you with us or against us? He's like, I'm not with you nor I'm against you. I'm just looking. Then you're condemned to Jahannam. He's calling you, هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنصِرُنَا? And you're like, look, I'm not going to be a Nasir. What's the opposite of Nusra, a Nasir? Adu, Adawa. You are in enmity. Oh, in that interpretation, then yes, one can say 1 million, so forth, how many Muslims there were at the time. Fine. But these accusations that you had this many and that many, source them for the love of God, because people's iman is with Abu Abdullah, as it should be. And so if people don't have access to the sources like you do, and you just exaggerate things, for example, then you're going to bend and break their iman. How many were there? We see in material from the non-Shia a larger number than even the Shia, by the way. Al-Waqidi and Al-Hakim al-Nayshaburi even mentions that there were 70,000 forces from Yazid ibn Muawiyah who fought the 100 of Imam al-Hussein. 100 minus the family, 72 forces. So 70,000 is a lot, it's a big number. Our material and the consensus is 30,000. Even from the Ahlul-bayt themselves, they said 30,000. يَزْدَلِفُ إِلَيْكَ ثَلَاثُونَ أَلْفٍ. Imam al-Hussein is with Imam al-Hassan. On his deathbed, Imam Hassan says, don't cry for me. لَا يَوْمْكَ يَوْمُكَ. There will be a day, 30,000 will work against you. So one, we have a narration from the Imam, latter narrations, and even neutral traditions from the non-Muslims at that time. Rather, well, yeah, no, if you fight Imam Hussein, I don't know what your deen is about all of a sudden. Reporters, those who were in attendance but didn't participate, many of the numbers register as 30,000 people. There is your number there. Another accusation and allegation is the amount Abu Abdullah himself killed. That number of 30,000 people were killed, the whole jaysh is gone, the army is gone. There's some reason that has to be entertained here, some logic as well. Al-Mas'udi in his Ithbat al-Wasiyya, again non-Shia material, says Abu Abdullah himself, when he fought and he was the last to go, you're talking about the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, how much do you think he got rid of? 1,800 single-handedly. That makes a lot more sense. Some will still say and maintain, hold on, that's a huge number. Well, yeah, it's a huge number. You know who you're talking about? The man who was trained by the man known as the Saif of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is reasonable. But these exaggerations here and there, because if you think even in the time span of Karbala, it happened before Salat al-Dhuhr, it finished about a few hours before Maghrib. The time it takes to get rid of that many exaggerated amount of people, you don't have enough time for. So when we see these records and numbers, one needs to reflect on them. Another one, brothers and sisters, and this one might hit home to many, and this is a debate, by the way. This isn't necessarily seen as an exaggeration, although some like to use it for exaggerated purposes, is whether or not Al-Qasim ibn al-Hassan got married. And this is something that's well known culturally, particularly in the Iraqi community, that woe on the family that didn't see their son get married, how a mother would have longed to see that child grow, like any mother longs to one day marry off her children, and that Imam Hussein attempted marriage between his daughter, Fatima, and the son of Al-Hassan. The former part of that, there's no ishkal, there is no wrong in saying things like that there was a mother who was deprived of marrying her son. There's no shame in that, by the way. Even if we narrate nohas or qasaid or latmiyat in honor of a young boy who was deprived of the blessings of life like zawaj, al-Qasim, there's no shame in that. But to say Aba Abdullah actually married, we have to cite. We do see some narrations. The first narration we see, however, is in Rawdatul Shuhada of Al-Kashfi. This book, an author, one of our scholars, compiled it 500 years ago. We don't seem to find narrations before this. And we also have Husn al-Dhann in this instance. Maybe he was alluding to the fact that it would have been something very emotional, that Al-Qasim never was to marry, and how he was this young man deprived of such a blessing. But you see, let's just look at the family dynamic. The idea is Imam al-Mujtaba told Imam al-Hussein that marry my son to your daughter. I don't want to leave this world without my son marrying your daughter. There's no harm in this, let's entertain this. But Imam al-Hussein has about 4 daughters. Fatima al-Kubra, we know she married Hassan al-Muthanna. We all have complete conviction that Imam Hassan's son, al-Muthanna, meaning the second dual, the second Hassan, married the daughter of Imam al-Hussein. Then who's left? Sayyidah Sukaina, we all maintain that she never got married. She grew and never got married. Al-Ruqayya, alayha salam, was 4 years old in Karbala. Is that marriageable? No. As-Sughra or Al-Alila was in Medina. So how? How can that necessarily happen? But there is no harm and shame in describing the circumstance that there was one who was deprived from that wedding. But to add, because we feel that there is an emotional faculty we can still tap into, you shouldn't say that. Because if what happened didn't really happen, then how will you meet Aba Abdullah on that day of judgment? People will be risen and raised, assuming that this was something, what you described, a reality. Another exaggeration, brothers and sisters, is we notice that with regards to the combatants, those who have fought Imam al-Hussein, many of these individuals didn't become guided by Aba Abdullah, that there was a failed attempt, that when he goes to preach to them, none of them transferred to his side, with the exception of Hurr bin Yazid al-Riyahi. That actually is not true, because we notice in the traditions that it's not just al-Hurr who joined forces with Imam al-Hussein. His son, by the name of Bukair, was alongside him, and he actually was a catalyst to help those on the forces of Umar ibn Sa'ad to transition to Imam al-Hussein. Approximately 28, many traditions maintain, people from that side joined forces. The thing is, because many people like to say this, claim why Imam Hussein failed. When he speaks to you, he wasn't that compelling, he wasn't that convincing. Only one man was convinced. That's not true. There were many who joined forces, and this argument and misconception is leveled against us from the non-Shia worldview. That even when he tried, he failed. La, tens of people joined forces, but one man we honor because of his stance particularly. And some of these people, when they joined forces, as they were running to Imam Hussein, they were shot with arrows. They were shot, they couldn't go. A man by the name of Yazid bin Safwan al-Tamimi, Yazid bin Sufyan al-Tamimi, he said, had I known Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi would change forces after Hurr had made it, I would have killed him. Right then and there, I would have killed him if I knew that was his intention. So after he does make that transition, 28 at least other people tried, but they were killed on the way. Some of them managed to make it to that camp. Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi was affected by the cultural misconception. Because the culture at that time was that Imam al-Hussein was a Khariji. He has left this religion, and that's how you justify killing him. He met Aba Abdullah 3 Muharram. He met him on the 3rd day of Muharram. And Imam Hussein had water before Hur had water. Hur was dispatched by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad with 1,000 forces, an indication that Hur is a man very competent in the skill of combat and war. And so he gives them 1,000 men. Most of them are fursan, horse riders. This is a strong force not to be reckoned with. Aba Abdullah alayhi salam only has 100, salamullahi alayhi. He meets him. Imam Hussein has control of the Euphrates. Notice this. He has control of the water. Hur asks him, give us some water. Aba Abdullah, with his magnanimous heart, gives him water. Gives him water, and he begins to order, give them and their horses water. I can't handle seeing an animal thirsty. Subhanallah. Then it was salah time. Hur is told by Aba Abdullah, lead salah. Hur said, how am I going to lead salah when the son of Fatima is in front of me? You lead the salah. He's here to stop him and take him into Kufa, but he can't but help himself. He needs to pray behind him. He then is told by Imam Hussein, what do you need here? He says, I have orders, I need to handcuff you and take you to Ibn Ziyad. Aba Abdullah says, I won't do that. Then he says that it's likely you might get killed. Imam Hussein then replies, a very cunning reply, ثَقَلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ. ثَقَلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ means, may your mother have miscarried you. Hur says to him, you just insulted my mom. And the biggest insult is not one that is leveled against you. It's the one if you're talking about my mother. He says, had you had any other mom, I would have said the same thing. But how can I say that to the son of Fatima al-Zahra? Had your mother been any other lady, I would have said the same. Oh, Hur, you forgot something. She did miscarry at one point. In any case, he says to him these lines. He's distraught. You just said that about me, but I can't say anything back to you. Later on, he gets orders. He is refusing to go to Kufa. Then you begin taking the water from him. Hur ibn Yazid gets control of the water, his fault. Later on, he admits it. Imam Hussein sees him, now you deprive me and my family from water. He says, look, I just have orders, come to Kufa. No, I won't do so. The 9th of Muharram comes. Hur bin Yazid is confused. I prayed behind him. We had an exchange. When I asked him for water, he gave us and the horses water. He's a man among men, and he stands out. Something is going on in his heart. He then sees a few things. These things destroy that heart. Number one, he hears Shimr ibn al-Jawshan saying, tomorrow heads will fly and arms will be severed. The head was Hussein and the arms Abbas. Then he sees Aba Abdullah lighting flames around the tents, brothers and sisters. Why? So that maybe at nighttime when someone wants to come and harm the family, they can't get through because of the flames. He heard Umar bin Sa'ad say, Hussein, you're preparing yourself for the hell of fire now. Aba Abdullah in hellfire. Hussein, you're getting ready for the flames of Jahannam by burning yourself now. That one got him. That one hurt his heart because he knows that this is Sayyidi Shabab Ahlul Jannah. Then the thing that really broke him down, Hur ibn Yazid, the 10th of Muharram came. Shimr ibn al-Jawshan calls out, bring water. For who? Hussein and his family and daughters? For the horses, put the water on their hooves. I don't want their hooves to overheat. When they're begging for water, saying, al-atash, al-atash, bring water for the horses. He couldn't anymore. Al-Muhajir says to him, Ya Hur, if they were to ask me, who is the bravest of all the Arab? I would have said you. You right now, you're yellow in your complexion, and you are shivering, and you look disorientated. What's going on? He says the line, brothers and sisters, that we need to be saying today until we leave this world. أُخَيِّرُ نَفْسِي بَيْنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ. I choose, and I'm making a decision between hell and heaven. What am I doing here? Should I be over there? He then says to Al-Muhajir, Muhajir, have you gotten water to put on your horse's hooves yet? He says, yes, I have. Hur says, I haven't done so. Let me get at it. He uses this as a ploy to trick him into when he gets on his horse and runs to the Euphrates, they don't attack him. Because that's not where he wants to go. He gets his son, Bukair, let's go. And say sorry to Hussein. Runs on his horse and goes and charges. Many start running after him. When he gets too close to the camp of Abu Abdullah, they return back out of fear. They see that man in his flag held high. Hur throws himself on the ground, grabbing the feet, saying, forgive me. I didn't know they wanted to kill you. I just had orders take you to Kufa. But they said now they're after you and they wouldn't stop until they have your head. I am the reason that your daughters are crying the thirst, the thirst. Can you have that heart to forgive? Abu Abdullah said, of course, the door of Tawbah is always open for you. What heart do you have, Ya Hussein? What kind of heart is that? Such that you're willing to forgive even the one who deprived water from your children and daughters. He says, of course, the door of forgiveness is open for you. Welcome, Ya Hur. He then says, my master, I need to do something to repent for my sins. Give me the honor to be the first to fight for you. Abu Abdullah said, then go do so. He stands up and he goes to the field and he begins to preach to them. Brothers, please think about what you are doing. This is not the one who Allah said in the Holy Quran, the children of Rasulullah, وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسُكُمْ قُلْ تَعَالُوا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ. That our children will come alongside you. Is this not the slip of the Holy Prophet of Islam? He's preaching and preaching. They say, look, may Allah condemn you and him for making these decisions. He then begins to fight. Hur bin Yazid, he fought valiantly, brothers and sisters, until they dispatched a wave of their men on their horses. And they begin to shower arrows over him. Hur bin Yazid starts to fight. And he gets rid of multiple of these enemies of Allah. Until a mal'oon throws his spear towards the back of Hur. Many arrows land over him and they swing their swords. He became the Kaaba of all the swords on that day. Until he fell to the ground. Before he hit the floor, he called out with tears streaming down his face, Assalamu alayk, Ya Aba Abdullah. Imam al-Hussein ran to the field. He grabbed Hur and he lifted him on his lap. And Abu Abdullah then took back what he said to him. He says, Ya Hur, anta hurrun fi dunya wa sa'idun fil akhirah, sadaqat ummuk. O Hur, you are free in this life like your mother has named you, and you are the one who is happy in heaven. The family of Hur bin Yazid buried him a distance from Karbala. That's why if you go to Karbala, you will see that Hur is a few kilometers away from the Bainul Haramain. That is why they removed him, because they knew that his body would be trampled and they did not want his body to be trampled. But if you go to the Haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada, where he was killed, the Madbah al-Husseini, that area that is shining red is where the biggest tragedy happened. Where he is buried is different. Why is that? Because when the horses of Banu Umayyah trampled over the body of Hussein, they kicked his body around left and right. Where he died is different from where he was buried. He didn't even have the honor of being respected and dignified after his death. Wa Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.